Welcome to this Info Now Explainer. Seriously, I am so excited you're here because today we are taking on the absolute greatest maritime myth in modern history. Imagine, if you will, a giant three-dimensional paper map unfolding right in front of you. Today, we're going to grab our metaphorical magnifying glasses, smooth out the creases of this papercraft ocean, and systematically deconstruct the legendary Bermuda Triangle. We are peeling back all those layers of sensationalism, the paranormal rumors, and the Hollywood magic to find the raw, unsugar-coated truth hidden beneath the waves. Okay, let's dive right into this with the ultimate curiosity gap. December 5th, 1945, 5 U.S. Navy TBM Avenger torpedo bombers, known as Flight 19, take off on a totally routine training mission. The weather is reported to be fine. Yet hours later, all 5 planes and the 14 men aboard just vanish. No wreckage, no survivors. I mean, how does that happen? How does a heavily armed military squadron just get wiped off the face of the earth? Well, this single question ignited a firestorm of conspiracy theories that has literally burned for decades. But as an investigator, I can tell you right now, the truth is far more fascinating and, frankly, more tragic than any alien abduction story. So here is our game plan for today. First, the geography of a myth. Then, human error, not paranormal. Third, the ocean's lethal science. And finally, manufacturing a global mystery. All right, Chapter 1, the geography of a myth. Let's map out the surface layers of the ocean. Let's metaphorically pull out our thumbtacks and pin these 3 vertices right onto our map. Point 1, Miami, Florida. Point 2, San Juan, Puerto Rico. And point 3, the isolated island of Bermuda. Now connect those dots and you've just highlighted an expanse covering up to 1.5 million square miles of the North Atlantic. But here is the absolute craziest part. This massive, heavily trafficked area isn't even officially recognized. No way. The U.S. Board on Geographic Names, they don't recognize it. No International Hydrographic Organization recognizes it. It is an entirely imaginary boundary drawn right over one of the busiest shipping lanes on the planet. And rushing right through the heart of this imaginary boundary is a very real, incredibly powerful force, the Gulf Stream. Think of it as a kinetic conveyor belt made entirely of water. It moves at speeds up to 5 knots. So if a ship or a plane goes down in the Gulf Stream, this massive river within the sea can sweep the wreckage miles and miles away in just a matter of hours. Add to that the fact that the Gulf Stream's water is significantly warmer than the surrounding ocean, and you get a highly volatile atmospheric interface. This collision of temperatures creates sudden, blinding squalls that pop up out of nowhere and disappear just as fast. But, the danger doesn't just stop at the surface. Imagine a dramatic pop-up paper trench opening up right in the middle of our map. This is the Puerto Rico Trench, located right on the triangle's border. It drops an astonishing 26,000 feet deep. To put that into perspective for a second, if a plane sinks into the deep water sectors of the triangle, it is swallowed into total darkness. Deepwater recovery isn't just hard down there. Without highly specialized submersibles, it's practically impossible. When things vanish here, the Earth simply hides them very, very well. Moving on to Chapter 2, Human Error, Not Paranormal. Time to unsugarcoat the famous disasters. So what actually happened to Flight 19? Well, the 500-page Navy investigation totally dismantles the paranormal narrative. Let's go step by step. Step 1. The flight leader, Lieutenant Charles C. Taylor, had a compass failure. Step 2, despite being a super experienced pilot, he was new to the area and became severely geographically disoriented. He actually believed he was over the Florida Keys when he was really out over the open Atlantic. Step 3, even though his students argued they should fly west towards land, the military hierarchy and groupthink prevailed, and Taylor led them further east into the ocean. Finally, Step 4, as a brutal night storm rolled in with 40-mile-per-hour winds, they ran completely out of fuel and had to ditch into massive pitch-black waves. It wasn't aliens, guys. It was a tragic, escalating cascade of human error. 10,000. Just let that number sink in for a second. 10,000 tons. That is the crushing, colossal weight of the cargo aboard the USS Cyclops when it vanished in March 1918, taking 306 souls with it, in the largest non-combat loss of life in U.S. Navy history. The myth loves to say the Cyclops vanished without a distress call because of, some mysterious force. But the actual physics, totally different story. Picture a cardboard ship in your mind. Now, overload it with dense, highly corrosive manganese ore. The Cyclops was already what they called a tender ship, meaning it rolled heavily. and it was actually sailing with a cracked engine cylinder. Naval historians believe the acidic ore ate away at the ship's internal I-beams. In the middle of a violent storm, that compromised structural integrity finally just gave way. The ship quite literally buckled and snapped in half, plunging to the bottom so violently and so quickly that no one had time to even touch the distress radio. And honestly, this brilliantly illustrates the reality of so many of these supposedly mysterious ghost ships. Take the SS Marine Sulphur Queen, which vanished in 1963. Paranormal authors absolutely love this one. But if you read the Coast Guard investigation, they essentially called the ship a total piece of garbage rust bucket. Seriously. It was a converted tanker hauling molten sulfur, and to fit the tanks, they actually removed critical internal bulkheads. The ship was structurally compromised from day one and suffered frequent onboard fires. Its catastrophic failure wasn't a mystery, it was a mathematical certainty. Which leads us to the ultimate aha moment of our whole investigation, the SS Cotopaxi. For a century, it was the crown jewel of the Triangle legend. Steven Spielberg even immortalized it in Close Encounters of the Third Kind, as a ship magically transported to the Gobi Desert. But here's the reality. In 2020, marine biologists found the wreck right off the coast of Florida. The historical logs showed the ship left port with broken hatch covers that the crew literally wasn't given time to fix. It took on water in a tropical storm and sank. No UFOs, just terrible maintenance and corporate negligence that Hollywood very conveniently ignored.
All right, Chapter 3, The Ocean's Lethal Science. Let's look at the physical reality underneath the waves.
Let's introduce a term you might not be familiar with, methane hydrates. Down on the continental shelf, there are these massive deposits of what scientists call fire ice. These are crystalline solids where methane gas is trapped in a cage of water molecules, and they are highly volatile. If an underwater landslide or a seismic event disturbs them, they undergo a rapid phase change, releasing colossal plumes of gas straight up toward the surface. The mechanics of what happens next are, frankly, terrifying. So in normal ocean water, a ship displaces water to float, right? But when millions of cubic feet of methane gas bubble up, you get frothy water. The density of the ocean completely drops out. A ship caught in a massive methane plume instantly loses all its buoyancy. It doesn't slowly sink, it drops like a stone through the aerated sea. Now, while we don't have definitive proof of a massive release causing a specific 20th century disappearance, the chemistry absolutely proves the ocean holds perfectly natural, devastating traps. And nature actually serves up an even more lethal cocktail out here. First up, you have the agonic line. For a long time, the triangle was one of the very few places on Earth where true north and magnetic north perfectly aligned. If navigators forgot to adjust their compasses as they crossed this invisible line, they could easily fly hundreds of miles off course into total oblivion. Then you have the convergence of storms that create rogue waves, literal 100-foot walls of water that act like aquatic air bombs, easily capable of flipping modern tankers. And up above? Well, satellite imagery recently revealed hexagonal clouds over the Bahamas that act as massive microbursts, blasting 160-kilometer-per-hour winds straight down onto the ocean surface. Finally, Chapter 4, Manufacturing a Global Mystery. This is where the media distortion gets fully exposed. Let's trace this timeline like unfolding an accordion. The mythogenesis starts way back in 1492 when Columbus reported a pillar of fire crashing into the sea, which, of course, modern astronomers confirm was just a meteor. But the modern legend, that was born in 1964 when a pulp writer named Vincent Gaddis actually coined the name Bermuda Triangle specifically to sell magazines. Then, in 1974, Charles Berlitz released his famous book Synthesizing Wild Theories About Atlantis and UFOs. It sold nearly 20 million copies. It wasn't until 1975 that a librarian named Larry Cush finally did the actual legwork to debunk the lies. Pulp fiction writers literally built a global empire on sloppy, unverified research. And this just brilliantly illustrates how deep the deception went. I mean, this is the media playbook totally exposed. Berlitz would claim in his mega bestseller that a ship vanished in perfectly calm weather without a trace. But when Cush simply checked the historical weather reports for those exact days, gale-force hurricanes were raging. Berlitz even took ships that sank all the way over in the Pacific Ocean and literally moved them to the Atlantic in his book just to pad his numbers for the triangle. It was a completely manufactured mystery created purely for profit. Let's look at the hard data for a second. In 2013, the World Wildlife Fund conducted a massive study on the most dangerous shipping lanes in the world. Number 1 was the South China Sea, then the East Mediterranean, and the North Sea. The Bermuda Triangle didn't even make the top 10. And you want to know who agrees with that? Lloyd's of London, the world's leading marine insurance market. They charge exactly $0 extra in insurance premiums for ships crossing the triangle because the statistics prove it is no more dangerous than any other heavily trafficked body of water on Earth.
So, if it's statistically safe, why on earth does the myth persist? Well, the answer is a psychological phenomenon called availability bias. This is the human tendency to judge the frequency of an event by how easily examples come to mind. Because writers like Berlitz gave the Bermuda Triangle the absolute best publicist in the world, every time a completely mundane boat accident happens off the coast of Florida, it makes global headlines. We are conditioned to notice it while totally ignoring the real, statistically frequent tragedies happening elsewhere.
Which brings me to one last number, 16,000. Just keep that in your head as we pivot to a starkly contrasting geographical reality to truly put the nail in the coffin of this paranormal myth. Over 16,000 people have vanished since 1988 in what is known as the Alaska Triangle. That is a staggering loss of life. But notice something. Nobody blames UFOs or the lost city of Atlantis for those disappearances. We collectively accept that the unforgiving wilderness, the avalanches, and the massive glaciers are responsible. The environment itself dictates the danger. It's the ultimate proof that we don't need supernatural explanations for tragic losses, when nature itself is more than capable.
Which leaves us with a final, kind of provocative thought. If the greatest maritime mystery of the 20th century was little more than a social construct manufactured by pulp writers for profit, what else in our history are we fundamentally misjudging? What other mysteries are just waiting for a little rigorous papercraft deconstruction? Thank you so much for spending your time learning with us today. If you found this insightful, please like, comment with what surprised you most, and subscribe to Info Now for more deep dives into our world's history. Until next time, keep exploring the truth.